Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Q&A session, Nutrition Q&A with renal or kidney dietitians. My name is Ryan Woolley, and I'm the Senior Director of Public Education, and will be the moderator for today's discussion and Q&A. In today's Q&A, you'll have the opportunity to ask kidney dietitians your questions about kidney-friendly eating and nutrition. So if you have a question, please add them to the chat box, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. It's important to remember that the information shared today is for educational purposes only. It's not intended to replace medical advice. And if you have specific questions about your own dietary and nutrition needs, we strongly encourage you to consult your healthcare provider or personal dietitian for guidance. With that being said, today we have two dietitians from AKF's Dietitian Advisory Group who are here to answer your kidney-friendly eating and nutrition questions. We also have a third dietitian who will be helping us answer your questions directly in the chat. We know there's going to be a lot coming in. A registered dietitian nutritionist is an important member of your healthcare team who can help you create and follow a kidney-friendly food and fluid plan. So before we jump into the Q&A, I'll just go ahead and introduce our speakers for today's session. We have Carolyn Feibig, who is a heart and lung transplant dietitian at Inova Hospital. Prior to becoming a dietitian, she was a fifth grade teacher. Carolyn became interested in kidney nutrition when her nephew was born with one working kidney. She has been volunteering with AKF since 2015 and helps work on many projects, including presenting multiple nutrition education webinars and helping content for Kidney Kitchen, our website and resource for kidney-friendly eating and nutrition. We also have Antonio Kane, who is a registered and board-certified dietitian. He is a member of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, National Organization of Blacks in Dietetics and Nutrition, and the New Mexico Dietetic Association. His work experience includes geriatrics, public health and pediatrics, private practice, home infusion, and food and clinical nutrition management. And then joining us in the chat, we have Kathy Wong. And Kathy is a registered renal dietitian with DaVita Kidney Care, provides nutrition support to in-center dialysis patients. Thank you to all our speakers for joining us today. We want this session to be interactive, so we'll start off with a quick poll session. So if you could click on the poll section on the right side of your screen, we'll have a few questions come up for you. Our first question, what is your stage of kidney disease? All right, I see the answers coming in here. Like we've got a good mix of people, different stages. And most people are in stage 3 to 4 with 55%, followed by stage 5 or kidney failure. Oh, changing. Still at stage 3 to 4 is the highest. Then stage 5, a few people with stage 1 and 2, and a few with kidney transplant. All right, I will end that poll and go to our next question. Are you on dialysis? Yes or no? All right, looks like a majority of you said no for this, but there are a few, about 6% on dialysis. Thank you for answering. And then we'll go to our last poll question. Do you currently work with a registered dietitian for your kidney health? And as a reminder, a dietitian is a member of your healthcare team who can help you create a food and fluid plan to help you manage your kidney disease. Looks like we've got about 15% who work with a dietitian. The large majority of you said no, but you would love to learn more. So hopefully you can learn some more in this session today. And so talk with your healthcare provider about getting a referral to dietitian. Oh, all right. And Nicole, thank you all for participating. And now we can go ahead and start jumping into our questions. So as a reminder, we've got our renal dietitians here, Carolyn and Antonio on the screen, and Kathy will be answering questions directly in the chat. So please type your questions in the chat and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. I'll start with the first one to you, Carolyn. Why is working with the dietitian to create a kidney-friendly eating plan important for people living with kidney disease?
Working with a dietitian is really important to help, especially it looks like there's a lot of people who are not on dialysis yet. So you can actually kind of help stave off a kidney disease progression. You can help maybe even kind of maybe reverse some of that. You can also maybe, kind of help when you get on dialysis, if you needed to kind of help you transition, more smoothly. There is a lot of misinformation out there. I just saw like in the little chat section, someone saying like, I've moved to 3 different states and the lists are all different, right? Working with a dietitian is going to help that. The internet is wonderful because it gives us, instant information. However, the internet is awful because it gives us instant information and who knows what those credible sources are. Your dietitian can help you kind of figure out what works for you and what works best with your lab results. They can help guide you to good, credible internet, resources like the Kidney Kitchen from the American Kidney Fund. And there's some other places that have some, like Davita and Fresenius have some good recipes and things like that as well. So I think working with somebody who's credible can help really personalize your kidney health and nutrition path. Oh, it looks like we put the link for the Kidney Kitchen in there. So yay.
Perfect. Yes, please check out Kidney Kitchen. It's the American Kidney Fund's website full of kidney-friendly recipes as well as helpful information for each stage of kidney disease. All right, Antonio, coming to you with the next question. Are there meal delivery services that cater to specific DASH diet or a kidney-friendly diet?
There are. One of the things that I would highly recommend is this is an opportunity for you to partner with your kidney care team. Specifically, 2 disciplines that come to the top of mind would be a social worker and or a dietitian, because oftentimes they are very in the know about community resources and other programs that might be out there. One of the things, and I was going to talk about this later in the presentation, is that there's a lot of stigma sometimes that comes centered around some of the community resources that are out there. Also, a lot of that stems just from, as Carolyn stated, a lot of misinformation and also from a lot of pride. But this is, again, a great opportunity for you to partner with your healthcare team and look at some community resources that are out there, an opportunity to support local so that you can have access to seasonal foods. There are other people out there, other programs that might be available if it's age related, like WIC or SNAP or TANF. And then there are other meal delivery services out there who specifically cater to individuals who have kidney disease. So absolutely. So my recommendation would be to partner with your healthcare team and figure out specifically for your area what resources are available, but they are available.
Great, thank you. And for Carolyn, send this to you. There's a lot of people here like just eat a healthy diet or follow a kidney-friendly diet, universally healthy diet. What does that mean for someone, and how should they approach that?
I think that it means a lot. It's very different from each person's standpoint, right? Because we look at lab values. I'm going to talk about someone who is in stage 3 kidney disease because it looks like that's a lot of what our audience is. When you're in stage 3 kidney disease, I think one of the best, most important things that you can do is to follow Ryan, you had mentioned the DASH diet earlier, I think. And the DASH diet, or maybe that was Antonio, sorry. The DASH diet is probably one of the most important things I think you can do, right? Following a vegetable forward, lean protein, water's your choice of beverage before getting onto dialysis, right? Because when you don't need to worry so much when you're stage 3 about your potassium levels. And so a lot of times you go online and you see like, oh, I need to watch my potassium. I can't eat spinach. I can't eat any of these vegetables. That may be inappropriate for you at stage 3, even stage 4, maybe even stage 5 kidney disease. You might not have a potassium issue. I think getting some of those vegetables in early is really important. I think that's probably the biggest thing that you can do. You don't have to be a vegetarian by any means, but limiting high salt foods like fast food, limiting red meat like burgers and steaks, and pork is also a red meat. And when you do eat these red meat foods, choosing the lean version like the pork tenderloin or a lean cut of meat like, a flank steak or something like that, choosing more fish, having some vegetarian days, having chicken without the skin and things like that, cooking at home, because then you are in charge. You're in charge of the salt, you're in charge of the fat, you're in charge of these things. You don't need to worry so much about weight loss if you're cooking at home, because you're going to be probably eating more healthfully, and the weight will also follow those trends as well. And water is your choice of beverage. I mean, like, drinking sugary beverages is just going to add weight and mess with your blood sugars, and water.
Thank you, Carolyn. Antonio, we have a couple of questions on in here about protein and specifically plant-based protein. So I'll kind of lump these two together. One person says, keeping protein so low keeps me hungry. I also have to watch carbs. What are some pointers for protein consumption that's mainly plant-based? And another kind of related is, are beans and legumes a safe form of protein?
Okay. Yeah, so that's a really good question. One of the things that I would recommend is our needs, they change as we age, as we progress, as we live longer with the disease. So it may just be a time for you to think or reevaluate your needs, especially if you're eating protein foods, which oftentimes um, would promote satiation or that feeling of being full. So you may just not be getting in enough. So my recommendation would be to follow up with the healthcare provider or the team that provided you with those recommendations and sit down with them and just reevaluate to see where you are and what your needs are. Specifically, when you talk about plant-based proteins, there are a lot of good alternatives that are out there to meats. Just like Carolyn recommended, having those vegetarian days and things like that. There are some significant protein foods and alternatives that are out there that will make you feel full, keep you feeling full longer. That also have some fiber in them, which helps make you feel full a little bit longer as well. And it would also kind of capture that carbohydrate portion as well.
Great. And just to follow up, what are some examples of plant-based proteins?
So some of your higher protein beans. There's also things like quinoa that you could use. There's tofu. So many of those things like that. So, and obviously it's going to be individualized because each of us has different needs and each of us are in different stages. So that all depends on blood lab values and all of those things. So you have to find out what is unique for you and your situation.
Great. Thanks, Antonio. And Carolyn, you mentioned a little bit earlier about weight management. We have a question on here. Someone said they're gaining weight after transplant. How can they maintain a healthy weight?
Oh, that's really hard. You're probably taking tacrolimus, and that is one of those side effects of that medication. Also, foods probably taste better to you now because you've got probably improved renal function, and you haven't been able to eat some of these foods, and you're just like, oh, yay, let me eat all these delicious foods, and it tastes so much better. Some of it you can't fix. Some of it you can fix, right? So I always recommend for people to try and follow just kind of what I was just talking about, that healthy eating pattern, right? So like if you look at your plate, have like half your plate be vegetables, a quarter of your plate be a lean protein, so fish, chicken, sometimes beef. And then a quarter would be like a complex carbohydrate. So like maybe a sweet potato or some quinoa or some beans or something, or like some like barley or something like that. Um, a smaller plate, right? So like research has shown in the past, like we get this big old dinner plate nowadays, it's 12 inches around, and you can fill up, I don't know, like probably 2,500 calories worth of food on that dinner plate. If you just switch to a salad plate, which is smaller, but you fill that up, you're only going to get about 1,000 calories really, and your eyes are going to see that your plate is full. And then people don't feel as hungry because now your eyes have kind of tricked your brain into thinking, oh, I'm eating enough because my plate is full, there's not all this negative space on my plate. So that could be something that you can do. You know you can certainly drink water before your meal, type of thing, to kind of help make you feel a little bit fuller. And then daily activity, I don't think is talked about enough. And really, honestly, if you don't need to go to the gym, you don't need to be the Arnold Schwarzenegger, style type of thing. If you just go and take a brisk walk after every meal or after your biggest meal, it does a multitude of things, right? So you take a brisk walk, that's going to help your blood sugars, it's going to help your body use those calories, it's going to help your blood pressure, it's going to help all these things. But also, if you think about it, are you going to overeat if you know that you have to go and take a big old long brisk walk after work? No, you're not. So you're going to also limit your portion size too. So there's a lot of benefits to, after your largest meal, taking a shoot, I don't care, 5 minutes, right? 5 to 15 minute brisk walk. That really does show some support with that. Also, just know that your worth is not your weight. So be kind to yourself.
All good advice. Thank you. Next one for you, Antonio. What are general guidelines for fluid intake volume for someone just diagnosed with stage 4 CKD?
Um, so this again, it depends. So it's, I know I keep going back to this, but because there's so many different variations, there's so many different stages, and then you can get to the end stage, and then we also have our transplant people, and each stage is different. Each of our bodies are different. So for some individual who has physical presentations, and that could be swelling or edema, problems with their blood pressure, things like that, they may require a more restricted fluid intake versus individuals who don't have those. They have a little bit more urine output, so they may have the allowance of having a little bit more fluid throughout the day. So to answer your question, but not quite answer your question with a specific answer, it is individualized to you, and you have to figure out where you are and for how much that you are. So I work specifically in the area of kidney disease at end stage. So I work in dialysis with home hemo, and I also work in center. For those individuals, we generally do put them on a fluid restriction, and that also could vary. But in general, we do about 1,000, which is about 32 ounces or 4 cups a day. And for some people, it may go up to a maximum of 1,500. You may see people who go beyond that, and some people who need a little bit less. Again, that depends on their overall clinical status and their physical presentation. So you have to really figure out where you are to get a specific number, because that can vary.
Ryan,
Thank
sorry.
you.
I When I worked in dialysis, I mean, this sounds really gross, but because I am such a beverage hound and it would be really hard for me to limit myself to 32 ounces a day, I would always recommend to my patients, like, you get 32 ounces plus whatever you urinate out.
Right.
So I would recommend once a month getting a big gulp cup and then peeing into that, because you know that that's 32 ounces. And
Right.
then you can see where you are on how much you urinate in a day. And you can see if it increases or decreases. And then you can add maybe that back. So you might get another 4 ounces, and an extra 4 ounces might be, the make it or break it point, type of thing. That just my gross little trick that I would teach people.
No, and those things like that are really beneficial, and we look for things like that too, because fluid is such a multifactorial kind of issue when you deal with kidney disease, but more specifically in the area that I work, which is dialysis. So for individuals who may get really thirsty, we do let them know that you could freeze things like grapes or increase their vegetable intake that have more water content. Let them know that anything that is liquid at room temperature constitutes as a beverage or as a liquid. So there are all these little tricks. You can use misting, hard candies, mouthwash. But simply sometimes it could just be the fact that people just have dry mouth. And it could also be environmental, and it also could be locality. So I live in the Mountain Standard Time, so I'm out in the West. So it's very dry climate. So in the winter and in the summer, you can't really tell much of a difference. It's always dry. So fluid is always a big issue for our patients because they're always dry. So we have to be creative in how we educate them on how much fluid that they can take in during the day. But to specifically address the person with the question, again, that's just individual, and you have to figure out what's best for you.
Yeah, all great advice. Thank you. Um, Caroline, question for you. I'm seeing lots of conflicting information about oxalate levels. How do you go about determining what is an appropriate level for me?
Well, I mean, it all depends on, do you have gout or not? And I'm guessing this person has gout and they're asking about oxalates, right? And then I feel like oxalates are very specific to the person who is eating it. Maybe some person doesn't have any issues with shellfish, but somebody else has issues with shellfish. Somebody else doesn't have any issues with beans, but somebody else might, right? And so I hate to say this, but you are your own best guinea pig. So maybe look at those high oxalate foods that you enjoy and then eat a low oxalate diet and try that one higher oxalate food, right? You try that spinach, or you try that shrimp, or you try that liver or something like that. You try those foods that you really miss. And if it causes a flare, I'm sorry, and don't eat that again. If it doesn't, then okay. Now you can maybe work that in. Don't overdo it, because then it very easily could end up causing a flare. But doing something like that, it's more of like an elimination diet style type of thing. I don't know. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Antonio, do you have any tips for grocery shopping or dining out?
So I'm going to say this jokingly. My tip for dining out is don't do it. And really, that is a joke. So one of the things you could do is, so there's a lot of things that you could do. So one is because these could be two separate things, right? So one could just be addressing shopping, and the other one could be dining out. So I'll try to hit both with a couple of points. One of the things is just being a thrifty or kind of a smart shopper. So if you think about something kidney friendly or eating on a budget, so these things would also apply. So creating lists and thinking of those things, because many of my patients who come to me, they're already down and I can't eat anything, nothing tastes good, and that's not necessarily true. So what I do is like to not focus on the things that you can't have, but yet the things you can have, and give them list of those things. And you can use it for two things. One, I always tell them to highlight about 5 or 6 things under each of the food groups, including beverages and condiments that they know they will eat. And they can use that for their grocery list, and also use that for the My Plate for kidney disease to put it into place to create their meal plan centered around it. One of the other things that you could do as well is look for savings or look for coupons. There are also programs out there through credit card companies, and also there are apps where if you shop and you spend a certain amount or you buy a certain product, you can get money back or money savings. And this also gives you an opportunity to be able to read food labels and to see what is in the foods. Because remember, you're looking at the things that you may have been instructed to limit or to avoid. One of the other things, the reason why I say eating out, don't do it. One, it gives you an opportunity to figure and to experiment with really tasty recipes and snack ideas and things that you can do in the home that you know are acceptable for the stage in which you're in. And also, eating out can be pretty costly. And depending on where you go, you don't know the chef, you don't know how it's prepared, and you don't necessarily know all of the nutrients and ingredients that are in many of the foods that you consume when you eat out. And so you want to focus on healthier eating as well. And sometimes eating out doesn't necessarily tend to put you on that pathway to healthy eating.
Great, thank you. And I know with eating out, it's a lot of restaurants will post their menu online too, so you can take a look at it beforehand. It just gives you a chance to kind of do a little research and know what meals might be in a kidney-friendly diet beforehand. All right, for you, Carolyn, so I know with kidney-friendly eating, some of the nutrients and things that frequently get brought up are sodium, potassium, phosphorus. Why are these nutrients in particular so critical to monitor and be aware of?
All right, so sodium, where there's sodium, there's fluid, right? Our body is really smart, and we eat something that's really salty. Instead of letting our sodium levels in our blood go up, it's going to make us thirsty. We're going to drink more water or any type of fluid. And then what's going to happen is it's going to dilute that. And so it's going to make us hold on to more fluid. It's going to overwork our heart. It's going to overwork our kidneys. We may not have enough space in our veins and our cells to hold all that extra fluid. And so then we might end up having that fluid like build up in your legs or things like that. We call that third spacing. But basically that's when you start noticing that swelling in your ankles and things like that. So salt holds on to fluid, makes your heart work harder, makes your kidneys work harder, right? Can cause swelling. Also can cause swelling around your lungs, and it might make it harder to breathe or to walk up a flight of stairs or things like that. That's the salt portion. Phosphorus. Phosphorus is a very large molecule, and it actually makes it's harder for our kidneys to, the phosphorus and the way that we consume it is a very large molecule. And so it's harder for our bodies to get rid of that phosphorus. Natural phosphorus that is found in our foods naturally, right, is less absorbed than like the added phosphorus that we're going to be finding in these like more processed foods, right? And the more processed foods are going to have more added phosphorus and actually more added potassium too. But these added phosphorus are going to be 100% absorbed. I always like to talk about how calcium and phosphorus are best friends. Calcium and phosphorus are best friends. They want to hang out together. And so when they see each other, they're like, hey, let's get together. And they hang out. Calcium plus phosphorus equals bone, basically, right? And so what happens is when we get our calcium and our phosphorus together, and it goes into our bones, and it makes our bones nice and healthy and strong. When we have too much phosphorus, we have too much calcium in our bodies, and we're not getting it into our bones in the right way, because our kidneys also kind of help with that. It's kind of crazy. I don't know. Those kidneys are really amazing. They do all sorts of things. But what happens is that calcium and that phosphorus get together. They make this like kind of like softer bone type of material, and then it gets kind of wedged into your vessels. And so basically I always like to talk about how it's creating you're turning your body from stone into stone from the inside out, right? And so like if you think about like your cholesterol levels, right, you can take Lipitor, and it's going to take that bad cholesterol that's nestled into the vessels, and it's going to help remove that calcium, and that phosphorus product is never going to get removed unless you physically go in and scrape it out. I've worked in a kidney transplant center, and the surgeon talks about how he goes in and scrapes out the calcium and phosphorus, that has been built up in these arteries and things like that. So that is the reason phosphorus is such a big deal. It's really easily absorbed in those like phosphorus additives, like in the Cokes and in the breads and in the everything nowadays, pretty much, right? And our body absorbs 100% of that. It loves its best friend, calcium. And so basically it just kind of starts nestling and turning your body into stone from the inside out. Then there is potassium. Potassium is a whole different ball of wax, right? So potassium is really easily absorbed, and it's really easily removed. It's a much smaller molecule, so it's easy for our kidneys to get rid of it. I keep on using my hand as my kidney, and it's just because your kidneys are about the size of your fist, so sorry. So basically, your body is able to, get rid of that potassium almost really great until you hit like the end of your kidney life, and you end up on dialysis, right? And that's when those potassium levels can start to rise. Potassium is part of it helps control our muscle contraction, including your heart. So when your potassium is either too high or too low, both are bad, your heart doesn't beat in the right way. It beats too fast or too slow. So it beats too fast when your heart is too, and when your potassium is low, it beats too slow when your potassium is high. All of them can create like a cardiac arrest. It can heart attacks, things like that, up to death, right? So these are bad, bad, bad news. We're trying to avoid all of that. So we want to make sure that when you are on dialysis, or even when you are living with kidney disease, that you do not, your potassium is not too high. Added potassium is also a preservative, so that's going to be really easily absorbed. Luckily, we are now kind of coming around to learning a little bit more about potassium absorption from foods, and it's not as easily absorbed as once thought. However, if your potassium is high, you probably shouldn't be eating a whole bunch of potatoes, tomatoes, and avocados. I hope that answered that.
Yeah, no, that was a great overview. Thank you. And I know for people listening, I mean, there's so many different, you know, nutrients like this to keep track of. It's hard to know what food items are high in what, which is why we created Kidney Kitchen. And on there, you'll see information about each of these, like phosphorus, potassium, sodium, and others. And we've got guides too on there where you can look up and see, you know, is this food high in certain nutrients? So definitely a great resource to check out.
Also, on those guides, I think it's really nice because on the potassium guide, it lets you know if the food is high in phosphorus, and on the phosphorus guide, it lets you know if the food is high in potassium. So that's really nice.
Those double whammies.
You're not like, I don't know which one is which.
Antonio, we have a few questions about you know, finding a dietitian. I know we've talked about how a lot of what you eat and the guidance for following a kidney-friendly meal plan is very specific to each individual. So it's so important to work with a dietitian. How do you find a dietitian?
So there's a few ways, and I think I also saw someone say that they're in a rural area. So my heart goes out to you because my entire state is rural. So you can do simple Google searches for your area. That's an initial place to start. Um, Oftentimes, many of your healthcare teams have a dietitian that works on the team. If they do not, you could also go to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, or go through the Commission of Dietetic Registration. So I know that's a mouthful, but those are two areas. Those are the organizations that monitor and are the clearinghouse for our specialty license and our licensure to be sure that we're able to safely practice in our states. And then the Academy is the organization where we get all of our education, we get all of our information. They set the groundwork, the framework for many of the interventions and treatments that we provide. So those are good places. To speak to the rural area, one of the things you could do is actually you could just go to like your local hospital, or you could go to a nutrition care center. So that could be like a nursing facility. It could be your local WIC office. Oftentimes, those facilities also have dietitians, or they have nutritionists that are there as well that are certified and have the knowledge base that could provide you with the information. Another place you could go is to the National Kidney Foundation website, and there's some information there where you can find where's the dietitian, or how to look up or how to find a dietitian. So there's multiple ways that you can, and then just a simple word of mouth, because I guarantee you, if you're dealing with a particular disease, or you're dealing with kidney disease, you know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that has it, or knows somebody that that has had it, or does have it currently. So also just word of mouth. So there's a lot of ways that you can find dietitians. Another place you could go to as well, because oftentimes you have many dietitians who are in private practice. You can go through your insurance company, and they will also refer you to dietitians that are in your area. And now one of the good things is that they don't have to necessarily be in your area. There are some dietitians who do have the ability to work with you through telehealth as well.
Great, thank you. And you just mentioned the insurance piece too, and there was a question, does insurance cover meetings with the dietitian?
It all depends. I want to say, now this is not my particular specialty area, but they do cover diabetes and kidney disease without dialysis.
Yeah, I think you have to be at like stage 3 or maybe 3B for that. And then post transplant, I think you get like 1 to 3 meetings per year, up to 3 years post kidney transplant.
Right. And there are some other complicated areas where they will cover insurance, specifically in private practice. You just have to speak with your insurance and see what's going to be covered. And then, yeah, that's just a whole credentialing process. And it depends on if the dietitian is credentialed alone or if they're part of a group or facility and that the director is a medical director. So they have that medical supervision. So just speak with your insurance to figure out what's available in your area.
Great, thank you. And Carolyn, Antonio kind of mentioned the different are the credentialing body for dietitians, and I'd love if you could talk a little bit about how with a lot of information on social media, there's people who say that they're nutritionists, and you know, how do you know if that's like trustworthy information? How do you determine who is the right source of information?
So to become a registered dietitian, there is a whole, like, you need an undergrad degree, then you need to take your internship through an accredited, body, right? It's a unpaid internship. It's like lasts for about like 6 months to a year or so. Now you need to have a master's degree actually to become a dietitian. Then you also have to take your, licensing exam, right? So we're all licensed through the CDR, which is this national licensure saying, hey, you've met all of the schooling requirements to become a dietitian. Then each state has their own licensing, requirements, right? I work in Virginia, which doesn't require dietitians to have a Virginia license, but we do require the CDR, that national, checkbox. I don't know. It looks like from Antonio's, letterings behind his name, it looks like New Mexico requires licensure for dietitians. I also have worked in the District of Columbia, and they require a licensure. So what you want to do when you're looking online is see somebody that has the RD or RDN behind their name. Usually that's behind my name. And then they might have LD or LDN as well, right? But to know that they have had all of that very medical training, you need to have the RD or RDN behind your name. They both say one is registered dietitian, one is registered dietitian nutritionist. They all mean the same thing. It's all the exact same type of schooling. Nutritionist is not a protected term, so really anyone could call themselves a nutritionist. There are some dietitians, just because that's such a common term, that just call themselves a nutritionist. But if you look and you go through their website, it'll say RD somewhere behind there. And so that's where you know that you're getting the most sound and medical advice, because we dietitians have to take continuing education. Every 5 years we have to make sure that we show that we have enough new information, and we're all science-based and things like that. So we're looking at the most, recent scientific data. This is how we know that maybe potassium is not as well absorbed as we once thought, because now there's more new scientific data out there showing us, like, hey, maybe, I hope that was comprehensive.
Yes, thank you. All right, question for you, Antonio. Can losing visceral fat and gaining muscle play a role in your eGFR dropping and creatinine going up?
So I may have to lean on Carolyn for this one. But yeah, so obviously losing visceral fat. So there's a lot of things that go along with not only just CKD, but we know that there are other chronic illnesses that people could also have as well. Losing visceral fat is definitely going to be beneficial. For one, it increases things like insulin sensitivity, like all those types of things. And building muscle, definitely for the osteoporosis, is going to strengthen. So I'm just making a generalization or an assumption with this, because it sounds like if you're training, that training might be particularly strength training or weight training. And in doing so, depending on who you got that advice from, it sounds like they may have you on a little bit more protein to help build that muscle mass. My concern would be is to just really go back and reevaluate what stage you're in and how much protein that you really need. And looking at things like your EGFR and your creatinine, what we do know is that both of those things can be tied to an increased risk in mortality. But as far as you gaining the muscle mass and your GFR necessarily dropping, and what that overall effect has on the body, it's not been as well studied as the mortality risks that are associated to both of those labs. So I would just go back and just have it reevaluated, see how much protein you need, and really look at what your overall goal is. Because if you're doing an overall healthful eating diet, the weight will come off and that kind of stuff. So how much muscle are you trying to build, and how much protein does that necessarily take? Because at some point, too much protein, depending on which stage you're in, it could actually be harmful to the kidneys.
Thank you. We've got just under 5 minutes left, so I think we've got time for at least one or two more questions. This next one for you, Carolyn. Should I be taking special supplements or vitamins or herbal supplements for kidney disease?
Oh, I love this question. No, don't. Please don't do that. Eat more vegetables, drink water, have lean protein. Don't buy any of that snake oil off of the internet. Talk to your medical team if they want you to be taking some type of like multivitamin. Maybe they do want you to take a vitamin D, or maybe you need to take a B vitamin or something like that. There are renal vitamins out there, but you want to be taking the ones that are being recommended by your providers. When it comes to supplements like off the internet or out of the grocery store, they're not regulated, right? So you don't know what is on that label is actually what is in that supplement. Now, where does that leave us as the consumer? Where that leads us as the consumer is we need to find a good reputable source. And so that's going to be someone who is third party verified, right? So there are 3 different types of third party verifications. There's that B Corporation. That has nothing to do with what's actually in the product. That has to do with other things. So don't be fooled by, oh, it's B certified corporation. That does not mean that what they say that's in their product is actually in their product. You're looking for something that is USP certified, UL certified, or NSF. Those are the 3 third-party verifications that what they do is they go in, the vitamin company says, hey, third-party verifier, we want to make sure that what we're selling is actually what is on our label, right? And so then what they do is they go into the factory and they take some of these pills and they test those pills, and then they go into these stores and they buy some more of those pills and they test those pills, and then they say, yes, what is actually in this is what is on the label in the amounts that they say is on the label, and there is nothing added like lead or cadmium or filler, sawdust. All these types of things have found their ways into our supplements. I'm going to black out my multivitamin label, but this is, I have it blurred. Let's see if I can do this. Oh, well, you can't, sorry. So it's this little, like black little circle that said USP. So like you can find them at CVS, at online, things like that, but you need to like really search for a third party verified. But first talk to your kidney doctor, because just because it's third party verified does not mean that it's okay for your kidney health. I would never do any type of Chinese herbal remedy, because they have been shown to affect the liver, affect the kidney. They affect a whole bunch of other things, and there are also, we don't really know what's coming from them either.
Okay, great, thank you. And that just about wraps up our session here. So thank you to Carolyn and Antonio for answering all the Q&A questions. And thank you to all our listeners for chiming in with your questions. And this concludes, this is our last session for Kidney Action Week. We've got just one closing message coming up the next minute here from our CEO. So I'd like to thank you all for participating in this session today. And you'll see in the chat an evaluation link to just fill out and give us some feedback on this session and any ideas for future sessions. So again, thank you to our speakers and thank you everyone for participating.